Faith Matters, an interactive program brought to you by MTA International.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another edition of Faith Matters, where you, our viewers on MTA, set the agenda by the questions you ask. Jazakumullah, and thank you for the questions you've been sending in. But just as a reminder, for those who are not yet familiar with where to send your questions, I could ask you why not, but I'll give you the email address anyway. It's faithmatters@mta.tv. That's faithmatters, one word, @mta.tv. We have been asked about previous Faith Matters programs. Well, I'm delighted to tell you, you can find these now on YouTube. Go to YouTube, put in the words MTA Online 1, Faith Matters, which is the name of the program, the subject you're after, and hopefully you'll find your answer just there. And if not, you know what to do. faithmatters@mta.tv. With that, it's my absolute pleasure to extend a very warm Assalamu alaikum and warm welcome to my panelists and guests this morning. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you on Faith Matters. Just in terms of a brief introduction, to my immediate right, of course, is a familiar face on Faith Matters. It's always a pleasure to welcome Dr. Zaid Ahmed Khan Sahib, who's president of the Gaza board here in the United Kingdom. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Sahib. I hope you had a pleasant drive from Gillingham.
Very pleasant in the sunny morning.
Sunny morning here in London. Talking of sunny, of a very sunny disposition, of course, is our very respected and revered Amir of Ghana, Abdul Wahab Adam Sahib. Welcome to Faith Matters, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. And I've brought the Ghana weather here.
Well, there you are, a bit of sunshine. It's always welcome in the winter months. And to the right of Wahab Sahib is Shamaila Nagi Sahiba, who's a former president of Lajna Ma'ala. She was the head of the ladies section here in the United Kingdom for a distinguished tenure and is a linguist by profession. Assalamu alaikum, Shamaila Sahiba. Welcome to Faith Matters. I think this is your first, but I'm sure not last time we welcome you here. It's a pleasure to have you on our program this morning. We're going to stay, whilst we've got a somewhat of an international feel to our program in terms of our panelists, we're going to stay very much in southwest London, where we're hosting this program from. And the question comes from Amna. Assalamu alaikum, Amna, and thank you very much for your question. Amna is currently a student. She's studying Islam and Ahmadiyat within Islam, and the renaissance of Ahmadiyat within Islam. And she raises one of the questions which she's been discussing with various people is on the issue of Purdah, or the hijab, and the taking of the hijab. And she asked the question about what is the level of hijab which is perceived as permissible, or how is Purdah permissible within Islam. And she quotes the example that she finds that some ladies may have a full hijab, others sometimes when they cover their heads, some of their hair may be showing. And her question is very much in the sense of what is the right way of performing hijab, what is the correct way, what is the Islamic prescription, and she wants the panel to shed some light on it. I think it'd be appropriate on this particular issue, Shamaila Sahib, to start with your good self.
Thank you very much. Well, the Quran is very specific and very clear on the instructions in regard to Purdah, and the Khulafa always remind us to try to adhere to those instructions as close as possible. But we do need to remember that living Islam is a journey that lasts our whole life. And Islam does teach us that we should progress our whole life. So there are different levels of Purdah for people. For example, if they join Islam, like me, for example. I have converted to Islam a long time ago, but Purdah was one of the issues that were a journey for me as well. And if you're coming from let's say Western country where Purdah is not as such practiced in any kind in the way that Islam prescribes it, even if you start covering yourself, your head, or you start wearing more loose clothes, or anything that is closer to the prescription that Islam is giving us, the Quran is giving us, that is Purdah, and that is progress, and that is something that should be that should be appreciated and should be encouraged. And you can't measure the state of somebody's righteousness in accordance with how they are doing Purdah. as I say, it is a journey, it is a progressive journey, and the further you go, the closer you get to it. But as I say, for that you need to keep in mind that there are different stages of achieving Purdah, and that only Allah knows how He judges a person accordingly.
Jazakumullah. You use the word journey, Shumaila Saiba, in terms of how you, when you accepted Islam, and how did you sort of overcome that particular challenge, you know, because going from a society, because there's cultural differences which exist, too often Purdah is just, or hijab is perceived as something that you'll see from the Arab world or from Southeast Asia, and as you rightly say, it's a concept which many from a Western perspective aren't that familiar with.
I think in yourself you do want to do it exactly as Allah prescribes us when you join Islam, but it is not always that easy to stay in the society and in the surroundings that you are in and face the objections and to face what other people perceive of you. And I think that is some obstacle that some people find more difficult than actually to understand why Allah has prescribed Purdah, because there is so much wisdom in the prescription of Purdah, and it is not just how you dress, it is a whole instruction of a lifestyle that you start to not to think only about yourself, but for the betterment of the society as well. But to work yourself through the strengths, to be able to explain that to people, and to be able to say, I'm doing this now, because God has prescribed it to me, I understand the wisdom of it, and gradually I start doing it. Yeah.
Jazakumullah for that. Wahab Saab, if I could come to you on this, Shumaila Saiba's rightly, she's touched on this, almost this cultural element which exists, and if we look around the world, the prescribed about modesty in dress, which Shumaila Saiba just touched on in her last comment, that is something which people often forget, and it almost becomes this kind of, dare I say, obsessiveness with a particular style rather than understanding the spirit or the value behind the concept.
I fully share the view of our sister, because the spirit is what is actually required here, and the spirit is that of modesty. Besides, you know, we have different countries, different cultures, and different professions, and even different ages. When a girl who has not reached majority is not required to have that type of veiling like somebody who has grown into a full maturity. The same thing applies to somebody in a country where people don't even cover their bosoms. Now, the veil here requires that we cover our heads and then also our bosoms. Now, when the person is not a Muslim, she may take it for granted that it's not even necessary to cover the bosom. Besides, she might be working on a farm, and in that environment, it might not be that necessary to cover the bosoms as one would expect. At the moment they become Muslims, they see that because Allah has commanded that the head as well as the bosom should be covered, they start doing that. So when that is done, it would be different from the very strict type of, you know, Purdah that other people do in other countries. I don't think even that type of Purdah is permissible in Islam, because then it makes you a virtual prisoner, you know, in your home. Whereas during the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on whom be peace and blessings of Allah, we know that ladies used to teach, they used to learn, they used to go even to the war front, you know, to nurse people who were injured, and they used to, for instance, Hazrat Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anha, we read about her that she would stand behind the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam and view some cultural displays. Now, these things were all allowed in Islam by the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, and so it is a little bit surprising that we have completely gone out of the way to make it so strict as to completely make a lady more or less somebody who cannot actually function as we expect of her. So if we go back to the times of the Holy Prophet of Islam, we see that the spirit is just modesty. we must be modest so that people do not cast glances, at us. And that is why the Quran also tells men to cast their eyes down. The same thing applies to the ladies. So what it means is we should conduct ourselves in a manner as not to unnecessarily attract attention that might create difficulties for society. And that is how we see these things. I don't think anybody within our community especially would dress and intentionally leave the hair, uncovered. That would amount to, sort of unnecessary fashion show, and we don't do that in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. I remember when the MTA crew went to Ghana, there was a program that was done by the Lejna Maila. We have one lady in Ghana who is a well-known broadcaster, Shamima. She hosted this program, and it is there for everybody to see. What the community tries to do, like our sister had said, is we listen to the admonishment of the Khalifa of the time. And all of them consistently have been telling us that the Islamic teaching of modesty as contained in the Holy Quran should be observed. And that is what we try to do.
Jazakumullah, Wahab Sahib. Just to come to you on this as well, Shmaila Sahiba very beautifully talked about that the Purdah and the hijab itself can be a journey, and as Wahab Sahib has said, in certain cultures or communities, women will dress in a particular way, or their clothing may be dressed accordingly to that culture or community, and then they become Muslim, and the mere covering of the body or the covering of a head is a journey, a step forward, not a step backward. And I think within the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, the community is not a body of Southeast Asians or a body of one particular community. It's all encompassing from all parts of the world, and we do see different styles and different types of Purdah which is observed by different people, but equally they're on these different journeys. So perhaps you could just talk briefly on that, but also the concept of Purdah per se is not restricted, as often is mistakenly put, about dressing modestly, dressing in a particular way and appropriately to women alone. There is a prescription on men as well.
Absolutely. I mean, both Wahab Sahib and Sister Shmaila Sahib have given us the spirit behind the Purdah issue. And Amna does ask a very important question, because this is something that is raised as a question against Islam in the West, and throughout the world this is something that is an important aspect of Islam. If we look at the verses of the Holy Quran in which the Purdah commandment is given, Surah Nur, verses 31 and 32, and you're absolutely right, the commandment there is both for men first and then for the ladies. And as has already been said, that to restrain the eyes is something that is incumbent upon both the man and the women, rather than the outer physical Purdah that we see in the ladies. For the men it is the covering of the private parts, and for the ladies that, and the covering of the beauty, that which may be obvious thereof. So, I mean, beauty is also in the eye of the beholder, as sometimes is said, and it does not only mean that you're limiting it to just the head or the headscarf or the covering of the hair. It is the whole aspect of the spirit of Purdah that has to be understood, that the Purdah is a form of modesty, dressing modestly. So there is no validity in saying that a headscarf with no hair absolutely showing, and below that you are wearing dress which actually shows the contours of your body. So that also is disclosing parts of beauty that Purdah does not allow you to do. So there is an outer covering, but also importantly an inner covering, which is the heart and which is the eyes, which is important in that respect. This is what Islam requires that men and women do in order to protect them from the morals that are ill morals that may be out there in society, and to fall into traps. So this is the spirit behind Purdah. This is the actual reasoning for Purdah, and it has to be understood from an overall totalitarian viewpoint. The second thing is, there are two other aspects, and we have touched upon those. One is cultural, and the other is from the aspect of taqwa, righteousness. If you consider cultural, as you've rightly said, that Islam is a universal religion. It is not only for a certain part, geographical part of the world, it is for the whole of the world. And therefore there are different cultures and different customs which actually have to be sort of assimilated and then given the color of Islam in that respect. so that in different parts of the world where there may be lax issues of intermingling and of dress as well, then this is something that, as has been said, is a journey that one takes from a lower level to a higher level, in which as the person goes on this journey of righteousness, then this is something that changes in their aspect, and they're able to perform the taqwa both outwardly and inwardly to make sure that they are living by the commandments of God Almighty as far as Purdah is concerned. So it should never be confined to one aspect of Purdah as, oh, the hair is showing, so that person is not performing the Purdah. Purdah is a very wide aspect of Islam, and it should be viewed as such, especially in the western parts of the world as well.
Jazakumullah to all of you for your very detailed answers. I'm sure this is a subject which we'll return to on future programs, and it's a vast subject in itself. And Amna, Jazakumullah, and thank you to yourself as well. This is an issue I know you're studying, Amdiyat and within Islam as the renaissance of Islam, and in the context of it, our Imam and our current Khalifa, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih the Fifth, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, again will constantly, as you may well have seen yourself, reminds ladies within the community, but also the wider community as well, about the importance and the role of Purdah and the role of the hijab as a symbol of respect within religion as well. But Jazakumullah for your question. If you've got any other further comments or thoughts, you know what to do. faithmatters@mta.tv.